Imagine a wound so deep it never bled, yet it never healed. It doesn't leave behind a scab, but a scar that etches itself into every look, every decision, every moment of silence. It doesn't cry for help with screams. It whispers through the body, shaping posture, changing the way someone flinches at kindness or stiffens at touch. You don't see blood. You see a smile that never reaches the eyes. You see confidence that feels a little too perfect. You see skin marked with ink and you call it art. But what if I told you that those lines, those vibrant pigments, those shapes woven onto her skin are not just expressions of style, rebellion, or freedom? What if I told you they're not decorations, but declarations, silent screams, symbols carved into flesh, not to impress, but to survive? Because sometimes, when the soul is screaming and no one hears, the body takes the burden. It becomes the paper when no one wants to read the words. It becomes the canvas when the pain is too heavy to carry inside. Maybe you think tattoos are about empowerment. Maybe you believe they're the anthem of the fearless. But look closer. What if they're not symbols of power, but symptoms of pain? What if they're not celebrations, but negotiations with trauma, with silence, with memory? You see ink. She sees a moment where she chose pain on her own terms because the world once gave it to her without asking. You see boldness. She remembers the helplessness that ink tried to overwrite. And now, I ask you honestly, if your story had to be written on your skin, what would your scars say? Would it be a date you try to forget? A name you wish you never trusted? A moment when your voice was stolen and never quite returned? If your body became the only place left to tell the truth, what would you dare to reveal? I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine this. A woman walks into the room, head high, eyes fierce, her skin telling 1,000 stories in ink. To the untrained eye, she is magnetic commanding, mysterious, untouchable. But what if I told you that every mark on her body is a door that leads to a basement she never meant to build, a place where memories too heavy to carry got buried, not forgotten? Every tattoo you see is not just a choice, it's a consequence. A way to make meaning out of the meaningless. A quiet attempt to organize the chaos that once shattered her world. Think about it. No little girl dreams of growing up and needing to scream through skin. But sometimes, the world makes her feel like her voice doesn't matter, like her story isn't worth telling. And when that silence becomes unbearable, when words fail or are forbidden, the body begins to speak. Not through shouting, but through ink, through images, through permanent symbols etched into a place no one can erase. Look again at that woman who seduces you with her boldness, the way she walks, the way she carries her body. You think she's fearless. You think she owns every room she enters. But here's the truth. No one tells you her strength was not born in joy. It was forged in survival. Behind her confidence is a little girl who once learned that saying no didn't matter, that her boundaries could be broken without consequence, that her tears didn't stop anything. So, she stopped crying and started carving, not with knives, but with needles, not to hurt herself, but to reclaim the parts of her body that were taken without permission. Each tattoo became a line of defense, a declaration that her skin is hers now, a sacred wall where she writes the chapters of her life that no one else cared to listen to. But don't be fooled. You're not looking at art. You're looking at an autobiography of pain, a language for the unspeakable, a diary written in symbols and color and skin. You think you're admiring beauty, but what you're really seeing is a battlefield where silence once reigned, but now Her body speaks whether the world wants to hear it or not. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because when you look at her tattoo, you're not just seeing creativity. You're staring directly into a wound that never had the luxury to heal quietly. Let's talk about pain. Not the kind that's forced upon you, but the kind you choose. There's a difference, and she knows it well. When life robs you of control, when your voice is dismissed and your body becomes a battlefield, you begin to crave one thing above all else: agency. The ability to say, "This pain, this one, is mine." That's what tattoos offer her. That's why the needle, though sharp and unforgiving, feels strangely comforting. Because this time, no one is holding her down. No one is violating her space. No one is silencing her screams. She chooses the pain. She designs it. She owns it. And in that brief, burning moment when the needle dances across her skin, she is no longer a victim of her past. She is a creator carving her truth into existence. It might sound strange to you, even unsettling, but for her, it's a ritual. A way of saying, "This is the one thing you can't take from me." And maybe that's why tattoos are often misunderstood, because while others see them as beauty, rebellion, or even vanity, she sees them as shields, warnings, boundaries. They are her unspoken way of saying, "Don't come close unless you're ready to meet the parts of me I had to bury just to survive." Her ink filters people. It protects her from the shallow, the careless, the weak-hearted. Because those who are easily intimidated by what they don't understand were never meant to get close in the first place. But if you look deeper, you'll see something else. Her sexuality, her magnetism. It's not just confidence, it's defiance. A quiet war she wages to reclaim what was stolen. Because there was a time when her body didn't feel like hers, when every touch felt like a transaction she didn't agree to, when her desire was treated like a debt she owed. So now, she moves differently. She carries herself with fire, not to seduce, but to protect, not to invite, but to declare. Her pleasure, her desire, her body. They belong to her now, and every tattoo is a silent contract with herself, a promise that no one gets to write on her skin again unless she says so. But there's a catch. That control, the kind built from trauma, comes at a cost. Because when pain becomes familiar, it gets tangled with pleasure. When suffering has been your normal for too long, intimacy becomes complicated. Every caress can trigger a memory. Every soft gesture can awaken a fear she buried years ago. And while she might seem bold, dominant, and untouchable on the outside, inside, she's constantly fighting a battle between wanting to be held and fearing what that touch might remind her of, between craving connection and preparing to be hurt again. You may see confidence, but beneath it, there's a heart still flinching, a soul that hasn't quite forgiven itself for the things it never chose, yet still had to endure. That's the illusion of power, because even when she appears in control, there's a storm inside she hides with grace. No one warns you about what it really means to love a woman who carries her past on her skin. It's not a romantic fantasy. It's not a game of conquest. It's an act of courage, a test of how much discomfort you can hold without flinching. Because loving her means walking through a minefield where the danger isn't visible, but always present, where the softest gesture can awaken a storm, where the memory of being touched without consent lingers just beneath the surface. You don't just love her smile. You love the silence that follows her laughter, the one that speaks louder than any words. You don't just kiss her lips. You hold space for the moments when she pulls away without reason. And you don't take it personally, because she's not pushing you away. She's pulling herself back into safety. You see, her past doesn't knock before entering. It just shows up. Sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes mid-conversation, sometimes in the way her breathing changes when your hand touches her waist. You'll notice it. The shift. The way her eyes glaze for a second, like she's no longer in the room with you, like she's remembering something she never wanted to live through in the first place. And that's when most people leave. That's where they draw the line, because they didn't come to hold her trauma. They came for her thrill, for her mystery, for her fire. But when that fire flickers, when her mask slips, when the little girl beneath all that ink starts whispering through her silence, they panic. They flee. Because it's easier to admire her tattoos than to understand what created them. But if you choose to stay, if you don't run when she goes quiet, if you don't demand answers she's not ready to give, then maybe you'll witness something sacred. You'll see the layers beneath the ink, the places where the healing hasn't reached yet, the pieces of her that still bleed in private. You'll realize that she's not just complicated, she's a survivor. Someone who learned to speak through art when no one would listen to her voice. Someone who carries the weight of years in silence, but still dares to love again, even if her love comes wrapped in hesitation. And if you're still listening, still breathing beside her when she's trembling and not sure why, that's when she'll begin to trust. Not quickly, not fully, but deeply. Because when a woman has been broken and rebuilt, she doesn't offer her heart to just anyone. She offers it to the one who doesn't try to fix her, only to understand her. And that understanding, that quiet, patient presence, that is love, not the fantasy kind, but the kind that doesn't flinch when the wound reopens. You are not her savior. Let that truth settle in your chest. Because no matter how noble your intentions, no matter how deep your desire to ease her pain, she does not need saving. What she needs is a witness, someone who can stand beside her while the mask slips, someone who won't retreat when the light inside her flickers, revealing the shadow she learned to live with. She's not broken glass for you to glue back together. She's a mosaic painfully arranged from fragments she picked up with trembling hands when no one else cared to. If you think your role is to fix her, you'll miss the point entirely. She's not asking to be repaired. She's asking to be seen, without judgment, without pity, without the urge to change who she's become. Because the woman you see now, the one wrapped in ink and defiance, she survived things you'll never fully understand. And that survival came at a cost. Her armor wasn't fashioned from confidence. It was forged in fire. She didn't wake up strong. She was made strong by necessity, by betrayal, by nights when no one came to hold her. So, when she stands tall now, when she walks with the kind of presence that stops a room, know this: it's not for attention. It's her protection. It's how she keeps the world at a distance. Every tattoo is a border, every design, a checkpoint. And if she lets you near, it's not because she needs rescuing. It's because she's testing whether you can stay when the weight of her story begins to show. You see, reclaiming her body wasn't a trend. It was survival. She marked her skin because it was the one thing left that belonged to her. When her voice was stolen, when her trust was shattered, when her innocence was taken without apology, she found refuge in ink, not to hide but to declare, "This body is mine now. This space is sacred." And yet, even in that strength, there are cracks. Not weaknesses, but echoes. Echoes of days when she doubted her worth. Echoes of nights when she questioned whether she could ever be touched again without freezing inside. And that's where you come in, not to erase those echoes, but to walk with them. Not to silence them, but to honor them. Because being with her means understanding this. There will be days when she feels like she's too much, too intense, too cautious, too scarred. And your job isn't to fix that. It's to gently whisper, I see you, and I'm not leaving. She doesn't need grand gestures. She needs consistency. She needs presence. She needs someone who doesn't shrink when the truth gets heavy. Because when her tears fall in silence, when her gaze turns inward, when her voice cracks in the middle of a sentence, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a rare moment of trust. And if you can hold that moment without turning it into a mission, then you've already given her more than most ever could. You've given her space to be fully human, not a project, not a puzzle, just a person, worthy of being loved, exactly as she is. People see her tattoos and think they understand. They admire the colors, the symbols, the placements. They make assumptions. She must be wild. She must be free. She must be confident, fearless, untouchable. But very few look past the ink. Fewer still ask what it hides. And almost none consider what it protects. Because what looks like freedom on the outside is often a minefield on the inside. You can hold her hand. You can kiss her skin. But one wrong word, one unexpected gesture, and suddenly she'll pull away. Not because she doesn't want love, but because her body remembers before her mind has time to reason. Because trauma doesn't ask for permission to surface. It just arrives, loud and uninvited. And in that moment, she's not being distant. She's being safe. Her silence isn't cold. It's cautious. It's her way of calculating whether you'll run, whether you'll react, whether you'll do what others have done before, admire her strength until it makes you uncomfortable. What you call stillness, she calls surveillance. Because when your childhood was a battlefield, your instincts sharpen. Your eyes scan everything. Your mind never stops analyzing. You watch, not to control, but to survive. That's what she's doing, surviving with grace that looks like elegance to everyone else. Don't confuse that grace for peace. Her calm is not surrender, it's strategy. She's watching to see if you'll flinch when she removes the armor. And if she decides you won't, she'll let you see her, but only a little at first. Only enough to test the temperature of your presence. Now, there's something else you must understand, something most people never even consider. Her relationship with pain is intimate. While others avoid it, she knows it like a language. Because for a long time, pain was the only thing that made her feel real. When everything inside felt numb, when her voice was buried, when the world seemed indifferent, pain was the only thing she could rely on. The needle, the sting, the burn of the ink. It's not just decoration. It's a ritual, a return to something she could control, a ceremony that reminded her she was alive, that her skin, her body, her story still belonged to her. And this is where it gets darker. Sometimes, the tattoos are not just symbols of strength. They're self-imposed punishment, not consciously, not deliberately, but emotionally. They are apologies carved into the flesh for not screaming louder, for not running faster, for not stopping what was never hers to carry in the first place. Every dark line, every cryptic image, every mark she struggles to explain, they are echoes of guilt that was never hers, but clung to her like second skin. You see art, but she sees confession. You see boldness, but she feels burden. You see freedom, but she knows exactly where the chains used to be. So the next time you admire her ink, don't just ask her what it means. Ask yourself if you're ready to truly hear the answer, because the truth behind the art is rarely as pretty as the surface suggests. And she knows most people love the aesthetic, but they're not prepared for the story. Tattoos aren't ornaments. They're survival codes, markings of every time she had to rebuild from ruin, every time she chose pain she could control, over pain she never saw coming. You look at her and think she's powerful, magnetic, captivating. But what you don't see is the exhaustion behind that magnetism, the weight she carries just to show up in the world without shattering. And maybe that's the hardest truth to accept. Her tattoos don't need your interpretation. They don't ask for admiration. They simply ask to be seen for what they are, a monument to everything she's endured. And no, she won't always tell you the story behind each one, not because she doesn't trust you, but because reliving it would cost more than she's willing to pay. There's a kind of grief that lives in silence, the kind that lingers even when she smiles, and when she lets you close, when she allows you to run your fingers across those lines and colors. You have to understand you're not touching art, you're touching memory. You're holding pieces of her resilience, stitched together through years of keeping it all together when she was quietly falling apart. And if you really want to love her, truly love her, then forget about unlocking her heart like it's some kind of prize. Her heart is not a trophy. It's a battlefield, scarred, guarded, but still beating, still hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone will stay long enough to prove not everyone leaves. Her love isn't flashy. It isn't perfect. It doesn't come in poetic lines or fairy tale endings. It comes in quiet moments, in long silences where she searches your eyes for signs of retreat, in hesitant touches that ask, will this hurt me too? Her love is earned not through grand gestures, but through your stillness when the storm rises, through your calm when the ghosts come knocking. And make no mistake, they will come. The memories, the flashbacks, the sudden change in her breath, the way her entire body stiffens in response to something you didn't even realize triggered her. That's when your strength matters most, not your muscles, not your words, but your presence. Your ability to stay rooted when she's drifting back into the places she tried so hard to bury. And that's the moment where most fail. They mistake her healing for drama, her silence for coldness, her boundaries for distance. They love her ink, but not the wounds beneath it. They chase the mystery, but retreat when it unravels. Because adoring a wound is easier than living with it. So they walk away, leaving her to stitch herself back together once more. And maybe that's why she seems so selective now, why her standards feel so high, why her love feels so distant. It's not because she's cold. It's because she's tired. Tired of being admired, but never understood. Tired of being touched, but never truly held. Tired of being studied, but never embraced for all that she is. You see, the freedom you think she has, it's laced with landmines. She might laugh loud, speak boldly, move like nothing can shake her. But there are moments tiny, fleeting, when her body recoils without her consent. When your hand brushes her shoulder and she flinches before she even knows why, that's not rejection. That's trauma speaking before she can, her nervous system reacting before her heart gets a chance. And in that moment, she needs something more powerful than comfort. She needs truth, the kind that stays, the kind that doesn't run from the inconvenient messiness of her story. So ask yourself this: can you love someone who might never be able to love without fear? Can you sit with her pain without needing to fix it? Can you witness her past without needing to make sense of it? Because if you can, then maybe, just maybe, you're not like the rest. If she ever gives you the key, hold it with care. Not because she's fragile, but because what she guards behind that door is sacred. It's not just her pain. It's her history, her becoming, her raw, unfiltered truth. And she doesn't hand it to just anyone, Most will never be invited in. They'll only know the surface. They'll trace the ink with fascination, but never touch the story beneath it. And maybe that's how it's meant to be. Because her story isn't for entertainment. It isn't for decoration. It's for those who've learned to sit in silence without turning away. So I ask you now, if your story had to be tattooed across your body, which scar would you choose to show? Which memory would you wear without apology? Which wound would you finally let the world see? Don't rush to answer. Let the question haunt you. Let it settle in your chest like a whisper you can't ignore. Because maybe, just maybe, there are parts of you that still live in the dark, parts waiting for permission to be acknowledged, to be heard, to be seen. We all carry invisible tattoos. Some people cover them with clothes. Others bury them under jokes, success, or silence. And a rare few, they wear them boldly. Not to shock, but because pretending they don't exist would be a deeper kind of pain. That's what a tattooed woman does. She lives without pretending. She breathes through her past. She dares to turn her wounds into symbols. And whether you understand them or not, whether you stay or leave, she'll keep writing her story, one line at a time, one scar at a time, one truth at a time. Not for your approval, not for validation, but because this is the only way she knows how to exist honestly. And now that you've listened this far, maybe something in you resonates. Maybe it's not just about her anymore. Maybe you've seen a glimpse of your own reflection in her silence. If that's true, don't run. Don't suppress it. Don't cover it up again. Instead, I challenge you, if this story moved something inside you, if it made you feel instead of scroll, if it made you pause instead of pass, leave a comment with 3 simple words. Ink also speaks. That's how I'll know you're part of the rare few, the ones who don't fear the shadows, the ones who don't turn away when the story gets heavy. And if you want more than the surface, if you want to keep exploring what no one dares to say, subscribe. Because this space isn't built for comfort. It's built for truth, the kind that lives in silence, the kind that trembles in your chest, the kind that stays. And before you go, I'll leave you with one final question, one that will follow you long after this video ends. If your life had to be written not in words, but in ink, on skin, for the whole world to see, what would you reveal, and what would you still be afraid to hide?